they like it. We spent $250 million on this.
Well, they did it. I said I was in it for the backlash, and I'm satisfied. 4 years ago, gamers were pissed off at Joel dying in the dumbest and most contrived way imaginable. Those gamers were labeled toxic and hateful. Fast forward 4 years later, and guess what? The normies hate it too. They think it's fucking garbage. Showrunners and journalists will deflect and say that it's just review bombing. The Acolyte was a hit, guys. It was just the trolls review bombing. It had nothing to do with the show's cancellation. Dragon Age the Veilguard was a hit, guys. The chuds were just review bombing. It had nothing to do with the game recently appearing on the PlayStation Plus subscription. This shit doesn't work anymore. Gamers have been vindicated. Reap what you sow, Neil Druckmann. You'd probably be better off in Hollywood making the movies you want to make. So the episode starts off with Abby having a nightmare where she tells herself not to walk into the room with her dead father. And then she wakes up in the cabin, and then she starts formulating a plan with her group on how they're going to find Joel. And once she leaves the room, Owen has a plan of his own to try to convince Abby to turn around and just go back. The next scene is Jesse waking up Ellie. It plays out pretty much the same way it does in the game, if you can get past the awful miscast that is Ellie.
You're the worst.
It's kind of fucked up you did that, though.
You know, Jesse is probably my favorite character in part 2, and it sucks because his only purpose is to get cucked by Dina and then shot in the face by Abby. So they walk into a restaurant where Tommy's giving a survival 101 to the community, and then Maria walks Ellie over to a kitchen where Seth is, and Maria basically forces Seth to apologize for being based as hell. So Seth says he's sorry and makes sandwiches for Ellie, to which Ellie gives a half-assed "I forgive you." I'm surprised the bigot sandwiches line didn't make it into the game, considering that Neil Druckmann and the Western game industry will add that in there to let you know they hate you. Also, I'd like to point out how Ellie can't forgive Seth for hurting her fifis, even though he apologized and made her sandwiches, but she can forgive a total stranger who beats and kills her surrogate father. Absolute cinema, guys. So something that's a little different from the game is that Ellie and Jesse go out on patrol, while Joel and Dina go out on patrol. Abby is scoping out Ellie and Jesse. The snowstorm picks up, and then Ellie and Jesse have to take shelter in Eugene's weed building. So Abby ends up tumbling down a hill, and she also ends up waking up a big horde of infected. So she runs over to the that building where Joel saves her, but this time it's Joel and Dina instead of Joel and Tommy. And at this point, my friend's like, "Wait, Dina's here. Are they gonna like do a switch where Dina's the one that gets killed, and then Ellie goes on a revenge trip with Joel?" I think we would all prefer that, but that would mean that Neil Druckmann would have to admit that he screwed up at part 2, which we know he's not going to do. Ellie and Jesse get word of this, so they go off looking for Joel. And I have to admit, I did enjoy this part where the horde of infected invade the town of Jackson, which that never actually happened in the game. Joel, Abby, and Tommy have to outrun the horde of infected, and they know they can't go to Jackson because that would lead the infected there. But here in the game, here in the show, the infected actually invade Jackson, and you get to see what it looks like for them to have to hunker down and lock and load and defend their town from these swarms of infected. I see a lot of people comparing it to a Game of Thrones episode, but if I remember correctly, people hated Season 8 of Game of Thrones because it was one of those divisive pieces of media, kind of like The Last Jedi and The Last of Us Part 2. So the runners and the bloater end up breaching the wall, so Tommy and others have to get down there and use flamethrowers and torch the rest of them. Tommy gets backed into a corner by a bloater, but he manages to take one down. We now come to the worst part of the episode where Abby leads Joel and Dina to their cabin, tricking them into getting more supplies. So they walk in, and they make his death so much worse, dude. Like they drag it on. First, they put Joel through a humiliation ritual.
That's a nice scar you have on your right temple there. And I'd say you're about, what, 6 feet? In your 60s now? I'm gonna give you one chance to tell the truth, Joel. If you do, let's face it.
They also put Dina to sleep so she doesn't have to watch the whole thing. She shoots him in the leg like in the game. Abby glances over at the golf clubs. Honestly, the only good part about this scene is when Joel says,
I have waited
No,
so...
just shut the fuck up and do it already.
and then she beats his shot knee with the golf club, and you hear Pedro screaming in pain. It's so bad. Ellie idiotically walks through the door like in the game instead of just shooting Abby the second she sees her. Pin Ellie down, and then she's forced to watch Abby stick the broken part of the golf club into Joel's neck, killing him. And then Ellie crawls over to him, and oh my gosh, Bella Ramsey's face, dude, it's just so fucking bad, dude. Neil Druckmann, like, this actually pissed me off. Like, I didn't think I could, like, this made me angry, dude, like, just like it did 4 years ago, except they made it so much more brutal. Neil Druckmann must have thought, I really hate Joel, so let's drag out his death and make it more brutal than it already was. You know, Neil Druckmann actually wanted to do a revenge story in the first game involving Tess, but Bruce Straley, the real genius behind The Last of Us, told him no because it just wouldn't make sense in that kind of world. Fast forward, 4 years later, Bruce Straley leaves Naughty Dog, Neil Druckmann finally gets his way, and then look what happens. So yeah, that's about it. The town of Jackson is cleaning up the dead infected, and Dina and Ellie are dragging Joel's dead body back to Jackson. And I don't think I'm gonna make another review for episode 3. I mean, there's no point. Do you really think Bella Ramsey's gonna carry the rest of this on her own? I mean, but Pedro Pascal was Neil Druckmann's moneymaker. Like, I have no reason to continue reviewing this piece of shit.